All right, good afternoon, everyone. So, for today, we will be talking about the sixth module in empowerment technologies. And for this week, we will actually talk about Google Sheets 101. So, based from what we have discussed last week, in which I introduced what we call the introduction to Google Workspace and the online collaboration tools, for this week, we will be continuing that discussion and I'll be introducing what we call the Google Sheets. Okay, now this module is all about the Google Sheets because, as far as we know, Google Sheets plays a very important role in structuring and presenting data so that it looks impressive. Once one has a good understanding of Google Sheets, features like tables, cell styles, formatting options, then it is necessary to make awesome Google Sheet workbooks. The role of this module is for me to teach you guys the various formulas used in Google Sheet, how to debug them, audit them, and how to use which formula for which occasion, and also few alternatives for any given formula problem. So this particular lesson actually targets students who doesn't have any knowledge with Google Workspace and Microsoft Excel. So FYI po, if you don't have an internet connection, say for example, you can just simply go ahead and look for what we call the Google Excel in your PC. Now, since majority of us doesn't have Microsoft Excel on our end, since it's actually a paid software, I recommend na gumamit tayo ng tinatawag natin na Google Sheets. Okay? And by the end of this module, I am actually expecting that you will have an understanding and knowledge on how to indicate the names and the functions of Google Sheet interface components. We will also be entering and edit some data. We will also particularly format some particular data and cells. We will also be constructing formulas, including the use of built-in functions and relative to absolute references. So, try to ask yourself, have you tried collaborating with your classmate online but this time using Google Sheets? Well, that will be the main focus of our discussion today, the collaboration using Google Sheets. So by the end of this module, you will be required to work with your classmates and answer the performance check. Take note, you will be working with your classmate na doon lang sa may performance check not the written work itself. Okay? So let's go ahead and start Google Sheets. So since we are actually mentioning the word Google Sheets here, it is a spreadsheet app on Google Workspace. It's a part of Google Workspace, and I believe I was able to introduce this to you last week. It looks and functions much like any other spreadsheet tool, but because it's an online app, it offers much more than that. Most of the spreadsheet tools. Now, alternative to this one, as I have mentioned, is the Microsoft Excel. We also have the WPS, yung mga ganyan. UPS na mga spreadsheets and many more. Pero pinakasikat yan kasi Excel and Google Sheet. So here are some of the things that make it so much better. Number one, it's a web-based spreadsheet that you can use anywhere. No more forgetting your spreadsheet files at home. That's a good thing because you are using Google's Google Workspace built-in app for as long as you have your internet connection. You don't really need to install. You don't really need to buy a key for you to install the Google Sheets. It's actually built in sa lahat basta may internet tayo. It works from any device with mobile apps for iOS and Android along with its web-based core app. Okay? So, you only need to have an internet connection for you to access this one properly. Also, Google Sheet is free and it's usually bundled with Google Drive, Docs, and Slides to, share some files, documents, and presentation online. It also includes most of all the same spreadsheet functions such as the Microsoft Excel's function. Yan. If you know how to use Excel, you'll feel at home in Google Sheet. But then, since this is your first time using Google Sheet, I'm assuming, don't worry because this tutorial or this discussion actually focused more on the introductory part of Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. You can also download some add-ons, yan, create your own code and write some custom codes if you want. It's online, so you can gather some data with your spreadsheet automatically and do almost anything you want even when your spreadsheet isn't open. All right, to get started with Google Sheet. Okay, so let me just move this one here and let's go to google.com, or just simply open your Google Chrome here and just simply type sheets.google.com. It's actually a very basic way on how to get started with Google Sheets. So make sure that your name or your email address is logged in. Yan. So pupunta ka lang dito. So add another account. Then there you go. You can just simply log in your account here. So if every time you are starting a new spreadsheet, what we call, yan, make sure to click on blank dito. Yan. And yan. This is actually what we call the Google Sheet itself, this entire spreadsheet. So there are some common spreadsheet terms that we have to cover in order for us to be familiar with what we call the Google Sheets. Okay? When we say cell, it's a single data point or element in a spreadsheet. So for example, this one, if you click on this particular rectangle here, that alone is what we call cell. Okay? So this is A1. Ayan. Single point po yan. So that is A1. So if you click on here, that is G11. So that's actually cell. So if I mentioned put a data on cell A1, yan, so you should know what to do. We also have what we call column. Columns are vertical set of cells. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Rows are horizontal set of cells. Itong mga to, A, B, C, D. Yan, mga yan. Range, on the other hand, is a selection of cells extending across a row, column, or both. So this is a cell. Once you have extended that, say for example here, this alone is what we called range or cell range. So if we will read this, pupunta lang kayo dito sa may upper left corner ng screen natin. So this is B6 to B16. So by adding or putting a colon between the two cells, that simply indicates that you are actually putting, or you are putting some range doon sa mismong cell natin. So you can also put some range hindi lang sa isang column, but then combination of vertical or the column and row itself. For example, from B12 to H13, yan, that alone is a cell range na tinatawag natin. We also have functions. Now, functions are built-in operation from the spreadsheet app, which can be used to calculate cell, row, column, or range values. Usually, kaya nga yan tinatawag natin na built-in, we can just simply go here sa may insert. Tapos, there are some built-in functions that Google Sheet, Microsoft Excel, and other spreadsheet tools that we have that we can use so far. So, some, kagaya nito, some if you would like to add some particular cells, you can use sum, average, count, max, minimum, and a lot more. In which, hindi naman natin totally discuss to, but then I want you to focus more on your performance check later on. Yan. So that alone is a function. What's the difference between a function and a formula? Ang formula naman, it's a combination of functions, cells, rows, columns, and ranges used to obtain a specific result. Now, in layman's term, when we say formula, ikaw yung gagawa ng sarili mong formula itself. Ang function kasi built-in na, pero pag sinabi nating formula, ikaw yung gagawa nun, in which I'll show you later on kung anong ibig kong sabihin. Okay? So, next, we have here what we call the worksheet. Ang worksheet naman, it's the name of sets of rows and columns making up your entire worksheet or spreadsheet. Okay? One spreadsheet can have multiple sheets. So, this alone, what we are seeing here is what we called an entire worksheet. So, ito, pwede nating baguhin yung title nito. So, we can just simply go here and put a title, sample spreadsheet, for example. Yan. So, ito kasi, spreadsheet ito. Pero, dito sa pinakababa natin, we have what we call the sheets or worksheet. So, we have the first worksheets in which we can also name this one. Yan. So, pwede natin siyang i-rename as, for example, ito, grades or names. You can also add another sheet here which you can also name, for example, names dito, and so much more. So again, one spreadsheet, the entire spreadsheet here can have multiple worksheets. So a spreadsheet is the entire document containing your worksheets. So those are just simply the basic things that we have to know, or the basic terminologies that we have to be familiar with since we are talking about what we call the spreadsheets. Now, you can create a spreadsheet and fill it with some particular data. Now, the best part about Google Sheet is that it's free and it works on any devices. So, kagaya ng sabi ko dito, for as long as you have your Google Chrome, you can already start working on with your project in Google Sheets. Okay? Now, there are 3 ways to create a new spreadsheet in Google Sheets, in which I have shown you the first way, diba? So, basahin nyo na lang tong part na to. Pwede kayong makakreate ng Google Sheet by simply visiting sheets.google.com. Also, you can go ahead and create or click on file here, tapos click on new, tapos spreadsheet, or just simply go to the Google Drive, tapos pwede nyo makita doon yung new na button, tapos pwede ka na rin mag-create ng Google Sheet. So those alone are the process or the steps on how to, use, or what do you call this one, create a new spreadsheet. Now, adding data to your spreadsheet is actually very easy. So look around the white and gray grid that occupies most of our screen here. The first thing that you'll notice is a blue outline, which is this one, and I have mentioned that this is what we call cell. Okay, and every time, and as you open a new spreadsheets, okay, and if you just start typing, you'll see that your data starts populating the selected cell immediately. Usually, the top left cell ang pinaka nauunang napapopulate yan, ito. So there is actually no need for us to double click cells when you add some information, and not much need to use your mouse. Kahit nga wala kang mouse kahit nga sa cellphone na touchscreen, pwedeng i-ano mo lang siya, pwede kang maka-work dito. So you can just go ahead and select any cell that you like, and you can go ahead and type something. Ayan. So you can also do the following things, especially kapag katapos ka ng mag-ano. So, the good thing about this, for example, if I will type here my name, ito, if you click on enter, automatic ka na, it will now automatically go to the next row na pwede mong gawin. Diba? You can also click on tab to save the data. Yan, and move in the same row naman. Kapag ka-arrow keys, pwede ka na ngayon mag-navigate. Yan. And you can click on the cell to directly jump to that cell. Now, maybe you will notice here na medyo naputol yung word natin dito. Yan. So, you can just simply go ahead and resize. You can resize the cell here. Itong mga to. So, pwede mo silang resize. I-hover mo lang yung mouse mo dito sa may gitna niya. And it will automatically resize itself. Okay, so if you don't want to type in everything manually, you can also add some data to your sheet, en masse via a few different methods. So you can copy and paste a list of text or numbers into your spreadsheet. So pwede kang, halimbawa, meron kang data na pangalan ng mga classmates mo, you can just simply copy that and paste that directly here. You can also copy and paste an HTML table. You can also import some existing spreadsheets, and you can also copy any value in a cell across a range of cells via click and drag na tinatawag natin. So let's try to take a look here, which is how to use the click and drag method or feature in Microsoft Excel. So for example, magta-type ako dito ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, di ba? So, kung napansin nyo to, itong sa may lower right portion ng ating cell, there is actually a small square. Tapos pag hinover mo yung mouse dyan, yan, magiging parang cross yung mouse mo. By clicking that and dragging that just simply, like for example, right, it will automatically copy the cell na gusto mong i-drag. So, ganyan siya, di ba? So, halimbawa kung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tapos i-drag mo siya pababa dito. Yan, magka-copy ng automatic yung cell niyan. So, halimbawa rin, kung gusto mo mag-create ng numbers na hindi ka na magta-type dito isa-isa, pwede mo na ngayon gawing click and drag mo dito pababa. Yan, and automatically magtutuloy yan ng paulit-ulit. You can also, do that sa mga months. Kung January lang, tignan nyo. Yan. So, pwede mo na siyang ma-click and drag. Diba? So, para hindi ka na mahirapan. Also, in days, for example, you can do that. Kung gusto mo namang try natin alternating, tignan natin kung magpapakita yan. Yan. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, kasi pag ganyan naman siya. Diba? Ayun. So, that alone is what we call the the click and drag method in Google Sheets. So, this is actually one of the most common na feature ng mga spreadsheet tools in which pinakamadaling way kasi para mag-copy ng values or data sa ating cell ngayon. So, ganyan, di ba? So, very easy to do. So, there are actually a number of ways you could use this feature. Number one, copying a cell's data to a number of neighboring cells. Yan, kagaya ng pinakita ko dito, including some formatting. You can also copy a cell's formula to neighboring cells, which is we will talk about later on. Kasi the good thing about that, hindi lang siya more on data ang nakakopy niya, but rather, pati formula and function na create mo, nakakopy yan kapag kadrinag mo yung baganyan, the formula and data will be copied alongside with it. Okay, so you can also create an ordered list of text data from this one. Now, yan natin yan. Let's try to at least talk about the formatting of data for easy viewing. Now, the basic formatting option in Google Sheets are available above your first cell. When we say formatting options, ito po yan, yung nakikita natin. So, we can actually click, we can perform some undo and redo, we can also copy, cell formatting. We can also format the numbers. We can also set the fonts, the styling, the cell outlines, the data arrangement here, itong mga to, and itong mga to, mga comments, charts, filters, and so on. Now, most of the time, napakagandang gamitin itong mga part na to. Especially dito sa part na formatting ng number. Say for example, you would like to enter a data kung saan gusto mo na i-convert siya into a money, for example. Yan. By clicking on this one, the currency tool, gagawin nyo na siyang money. Yan. So, nagkaroon na siya ng dollar sign. Now, you can also set or change the currency here into Philippine peso. Yan, if you want. So, currency yan. Pwede mo rin siyang gawing as percentage. Diba? So, kino-convert niya ngayon into percentage. You can also decrease the decimal places. You can increase the decimal places if you want. Yan. You can also, say for example, meron ka ditong number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. Yan. So, pwede mo siyang gawing automatic lang na number. Yan. Pwede mong gawing plain text lang siya. Ibig sabihin nandito sa may left, mag-format yan sa my left side kasi text lang siya. Hindi siya nababasa as number. You can also convert that into a scientific version. You can also convert that into time and so on. Napaka-useful po niyan ng part na yan. Kasi, most of the time gagamitin natin yan kapag gumagawa tayo ng mga data na meron tayo. Okay? Also, yan, it's also functional enough that you could use this very easily to keep track of information. In fact, Google Sheets make it so simple to capture those information, share it, and return it to the later for reference that it acts as my highly structured note-taking tool. Say for example, ito, pwede nyo gamitin itong napaka basic na example dito. So, pwede nyo siyang gawin on your own if you want. Pero i-introduce ko rin sa inyo yung tinatawag natin na freezing or row freezing. Okay, ang ginagawa kasi ni row freezing dito is, for example, gawa tayo dito ng napaka-basic na table. So, for example, you have the days here. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Yan, tapos you have, for example, some data na ilalagay mo dito. Basic lang na mga data lang natin. Yan. So, by simply freezing, by simply freezing the row, meaning, tingnan mo ha, kapag ka ina-scroll down ko kasi ito, sumasama pati ito. Diba? Pero kapag ka nag-freeze ka ng row, kapag ka ini-scroll down mo to, matitira pa rin ito. In which is very useful tool or feature ni Microsoft Excel. So you can go ahead and click on view, freeze, yan, you can freeze the one row, tapos notice na kapag ka ini-scroll down ko siya pababa, ayun na. Diba? Hindi na sumasama yung sa may taas na part. Yan. So usually kapag ka nag-freeze ka dito, pagka nag-enter ka kasi ng mas maraming data, it's better kapag ka gumagamit ka ng freezing para hindi ka nalilito kung nasaan na nga ba. Diba? You can also, make the header text pop with some simple text formatting. Yan. So for example, kung gusto mo siyang i-bold yung mga text, pwede mong gawin yan. Yan. I-bold mo lang siya. You can also change the fonts if you want. Ayan. You can also change the text color if you want as well. You can now also fill the color of the cells itself. Yeah, basically napakadami mong pwedeng gawin dito sa Microsoft Excel. Ayan o. Diba? So, i-italicize. Pwede kung gusto mo rin siyang halimbawa itong Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is yung rotation niya is naka ganito. Maganda rin, diba? Pwede mo rin siyang gawin na pa ganyan. So, ayan po. Okay? So, very, very basic. Di ba? Wala kang masyadong problema dito sa Microsoft Excel. Now, there is also this feature in which you can resize, di ba? Sabi ko, you can resize the cell. Pero isang cell lang yung pinakita ko. Igaganyan mo lang siya. Pero kung gusto mong pantay-pantay, click on the cells na gusto mong i-resize. Tapos, i-right click mo sila. Tapos, just simply make sure na i-resize mo yung column. Ito. Just simply resize the column into, for example, 10. Mag-shrink yan, di ba? Pero at least pare-pareho yung ano mo dito. Ayan, di ba? So, you can also click on fit to data. Automatic yan kung ano yung size ng data mo. Yun din yung magiging size nito. Pero hindi pantay-pantay yung dito. Pero if you want to, just play around with everything para makuha nyo yung gist. Yan. Diba? So, very, very easy to do. Very basic po. Okay. So, meron din tayo dito. The next thing I'll do to clean this up a bit is format my average price serving to be a dollar value. Yan, pinakita ko na rin sa inyo, diba? So, pwede ka mag-format. Gagawin mo siyang dollar. Yung mga dito. Okay, see for example, ito, meron tayong mga formulas and function na gagamitin dito sa Excel. Now, let's create here a very basic program in which we will call this as, for example, salary or weekly budget na lang. Weekly budget. Okay, so, for example, this will be the title. Yan, di ba? My weekly budget, perhaps. My weekly budget. Tapos, you have here Monday. Tapos, tinuruan ko kayo na pwede kayong ganyan. So, until Sunday, mas maganda. Diba? So, you have your expenses dito siguro. Diba? Say, for example, your expenses might be fare, food, ano pa ba? Necessities. Diba? Necessities. Tapos, etc. For example. Yan. So, try natin itong i-format. Number one, we want this title to be placed exactly on the middle. Dito sa part na to. Pinaka-middle na to. So, we can use this feature in Microsoft Excel in which once you click on the entire cell, tapos click mo tong button na to, this is merging of cell na tinatawag. Yan, it will automatically make the A1 cell into a single cell and you can now go ahead and center. Yan. Center your title. Diba? Goods, wala kang problema. Ganun din dito. If you want to at least have or format this cell in such a way na itong Monday uusod dito, pwede naman natin siyang i-copy tapos i-paste dito. Burahin natin ito. Nagets ba natin? Diba? It's really that easy. So, ibig sabihin na usod din to, you can redo that by simply clicking on something like that. Tapos dito, kung gusto mong maglagay dito ng word na expenses, you can just simply click on the cell, tapos maglalagay ka ng column on the left, tapos maglalagay ka dito ng word na expenses. Pero yung expenses, gusto mong naka vertical yung alignment. So, you can merge that, tapos pwede mo ngayong ganyan. You can format the cell, you can make it center, and so on. So, ganyan po siya. Diba? So, madali lang, di ba? Ayan, dito tayo sa wrapping or dito na lang. Yan, para gumit na siya. So, we can now go ahead and resize this. Expenses. Diba? Fare, food, necessities, etc. Tapos, we can go ahead and put here total. Now, if you want to make everything or put everything into table, ayusin ko muna to. Merge natin into something like that. And tapos if I want everything to be placed in a table, I can just simply go ahead and click on or highlight the entire cell. Tapos pinutin ko tong border. Piliin ko yan. Tapos, yun. Pwede na, di ba? Pwede mo ngayon tong i-format. Mag-fill ka ng color, for example. It all depends on you. Now, since we are talking about the formatting of, the way on how you format things. For example, ito. You have here, you will simply place here the fare, for example, yung food, necessities, and etc. na mga price. So, we can just simply go ahead and click on the entire cell, tapos i-format natin yan into Philippine peso. So, every time na maglalagay ka dito ng value, for example, 50 pesos, yan, automatic, it will now be converted into Philippine peso. Now, we can use what we call the add function to simply add all of the following. Diba? You can do that by clicking on the cell first. Tapos, just simply click on insert. Tapos, click on function. Click on sum. Ano yung nakalagay dito? This is actually the way on how you add function. You always start from adding equal sign plus the word sum. Tapos, followed by open and close parenthesis. Inside the open and close parenthesis is actually where you will be placing the cell range. So, ang cell range natin dito is from C3, C3, from C3 to C6. So, by holding shift button, yan, pipinutin ko ngayon si C6. Automatic na mailalagay yan. And I will hit enter. Diba? So, yun yung total ngayon nung pinaka kinastos natin ng one day. That's actually the add function. Kapag ayaw mo naman gumamit ng function, may tinatawag tayo na formula. Ang formula, ikaw yung gagawa. Diba? Pag gagawa ka ng formula, you start from putting an equal sign and click on the first cell. Tapos add a plus sign. Click on the second cell. Add another plus sign. Click on the third cell and add another plus sign. Click on the last cell. And click on equal. Pero syempre, mas madali kasi kung maglalagay ka na lang dito ng function na built-in. Tapos click mo na lang siya ng paganyan. Diba? So, for example, gusto ko ulit dito maglagay ng mga value na paiba-iba. Yan. Diba? So, iba lang. Yan. So, pwede mo ulit gawin si sum. Tapos, maglagay ka ngayon dito ng ganyan. And so on. Now, the good thing about Microsoft Excel, yung tinatawag na yun nga, yung click and drag feature natin, by clicking and dragging this one, automatic na kasing magka-copy yung formula or yung function na ginamit mo. And automatic din na mag-a-adjust yung cell range na meron. So, in this case, di ba, we started from C3 to C6. Since we copied that, nag-adjust din ito into D3 to D6. Hindi niya totally kinapi yung kung ano yung dito. Diba? So, ganda niyan, every time na nag-change ka ng value dito, nag-change din yung values dito ngayon. O, diba? So, very convenient. By the way, this is really powerful if you know how to use it. Personally, I have been using this one like for few years now, to the point na ginagawa ko na rin siyang programming practice para sa akin. Diba? So that's actually adding or using the sum function. You can also use average naman. Ang average natin dito, for example, dito kukunin natin yung average na ginastos mo for the entire week for the fare. So, we already know that the average is simply by adding all of the expenses from Monday to Sunday divided by the number of days, which is 7. Diba? So, pwede natin gawing ito, plus ito, plus ito, plus this one, plus this one, plus this one, and this one. Diba? Tapos, yun yung total nung gastos mo. Pero average yung tinitignan natin eh. And basic math, we can just simply put the entire formula into parentheses and divide by the number of days, which is 7. Yan. So, para makuha yung average. So, pwede mo rin siyang i-click and drag, pababa. Makukuha niya rin yung average niya. But, that's not the case because, for example, you don't really know the number of values ng days. Hindi mo alam kung saan mo siya i-divide. And, syempre, gusto mo ng shortcut. Same, then, just simply click on view, insert, click on function, click on average, and voila. Click on the range, click and drag mo pababa. Automatic na rin magpapakita yung average mo na meron. Diba? Very, very easy po. That's actually the average. It finds the average of a range of a cell. Now, you can also use what we call the count. Ito, yung count ngayon, it counts the values in a range of cells. So, for example, ito. Gamitin natin si count dito. Ang count naman, kung titignan natin, if you will try to check, ang count kasi will simply count the number of numeric values in a data set. So, paano natin gagamitin yan? So, put equal, tapos, count. Ano yung ika-count mo? Oops. Ano yung ika-count mo from here to here? You should be expecting 7 values. Pero take note, pag tinanggal ko itong isa dito, ayan, tinan mo, naging 6 yung count, naging 5, naging ganyan. Because the count function only counts numeric values. Tandaan nyo yan. Okay? So, kapag kayo dito, i-drag down ko pababa. Ganun po siya. Same goes through with what we called max naman. Yan ako lang to. I-adjust ko lang ito. Adjust natin ito. Yan. Kapag ka max, ganun din. Ang max naman, it's a different story because max, as of the moment, finds the highest value in a range of cells. Highest value, we already know that the highest value of expenses for food, for fare, is 80 pesos. So, pwede natin gamitin si max. Tapos, open and closing parenthesis. Just simply click on the cell range na gusto mong hanapin. And, there you go. So, pumunta siya dito. So, every time na binabago ko yung value dito, for example, naglagay ako ng 100, of course, mag-update si average, mag-update si count. Ganun din dito. Diba? So, same goes through with min. Ang minimum naman, yan, using minimum. Ayan. So, kung alin yung pinakamababa naman. So, kapag ka naglagay ako dito ng 10, mag-update po yun lahat. So, you can actually try this on your own and make sure to see and realize kung ano nangyayari. Diba? So, ganun po siya. But that's max and minimum. So, we have tried using the sum formula. We already know how to do that. Okay, we already know how to use the count formula, the average formula as well. Ito, you can also use some simple arithmetic formulas na ginagamit natin. Yan, kung halimbawa, maglalagay ka ng mga, tawag dito, magpa-perform ka ng formula na gagawin mong sarili, parang pinakita ko kanina, di ba? If you want to perform addition, ganyan, 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 ganyan. So, that alone is a formula. Now, meron ding other important functions and formulas dito in which what we call the addition, multiplication, yan, division, tapos exponentiation. By using the following functions, we have sum, product, quotient, we can just simply make our lives easier. Diba? So, ganun po. Pwede natin silang magamit. Sum lang syempre ang papakita ko dito para at least alam nyo na kasi kung paano siya gamitin, di ba? Alam nyo na kung paano siya magagamit in particular. What else? We also have here yung count A. Ito. Ang count A naman, it simply counts how many cells in a range, pero this time using cell referencing. It counts the values and labels and it doesn't count empty cells. Kung titignan natin yung definition ni count A dito, ayun o, the number of values in a dataset. So for as long as it has values, it will simply count that. Pero mamaya natin pag-uusapan yan because we will talk about what we call cell referencing. Pag sinabi kasi nating cell referencing, ayan, asa ba yun? Ang cell referencing, it's simply the way on how you make a particular cell absolute or not. So we have here, for example, ito, pag naglagay ka ng $sign before the cell itself and after the cell, tingnan natin ito halimbawa ito. I have here, for example, grades, 90, 95, 93, 92, 90. And I want to check the average of the entire grade here. So, pwede natin gamitin si average from C11 yan, to C15. Diba? Now, kapag meron ka ulit panibagong set ng grades dito, you can just simply copy and paste that. Diba? So, pwede mo siya ngayong ma-modify in such a way na ganito. Ayan. Now, for example, I want the average to be added or to be added in a specific number. So, for example, gusto ko siyang malagay dito. Meron tayong i-add ko siya into 90, for example. So, I can just simply put here the average, diba? Average plus this one. Diba? Plus B10. So, you notice na tama, nag-add itong average na to into this cell. Pero kapag igaganyan ko yan, tingnan nyo ang nangyari. Nagkaroon na dito ng error. It's because, syempre, wala namang value dito na pinag-add natin. But then, you will notice na itong 86.6, hindi siya talaga nag-add dito sa 90. Ang gusto natin mangyari, mag-add lahat ng ito dito sa number na to. We can simply solve that issue by converting a specific cell into what we call an absolute reference. So, we can do that by adding a $sign before the letter and after the letter itself. Ang ginagawa nito, take note, itadrag ko yung ngayon yan. Ginagawa niyan, kapag ka nag-click and drag tayo, automatic yung B10 na yun or yung cell na yun, hindi umaalis. Ayun, hindi siya umaalis ng value. Kung nasan siya, nandun pa rin yung ano niya mismo. Yan, B10. Nagets ba natin? Diba? So, B10. That's a good thing about having an absolute value or absolute reference na tinatawag natin. Diba? So, I hope you understood the concept of absolute reference naman. So, gawin natin tong si count A. Ang count A, it's actually a very, very easy stuff to do. Yan, gawin din natin dito si count A. Count A. So, anong ika-count niya? The number of values. Number of values in a dataset. So, parang count din siya, pero kapag ka naglagay tayo dito ng bakante, ayun. Diba? So, parang ganun din siya. But then, it will also count, of course, it will also count some words as well. Yun yung count A naman. We also have what we call count if. Ayan. Ang count if naman, meron kang specific condition. Ito. Ang ika-count mo dito is, ayan o, there is a specific condition here, a conditional count across a range. Say for example, I would like to count the number of cells which is less than 50 pesos. For example, 50 pesos. So, paano ko gagawin yon? By simply adding here, yan, count if, oops. Ayan, ulitin natin. Count if, tapos, dito, open and close parenthesis, yan. Sa loob nito, ilalagay ko muna si range niya. So, gusto ko munang i-count dito yan. Now, by adding a comma, I will now indicate the, what do you call this one? The condition. So, use the arrow keys to select a range. So, for example, ito, gusto ko yung range nito. Pero this time, for as long as it is less than or equal 50 pesos. Ganun siya. So, from this cell, ika-count niya kung ilan yung cell na may less than or equal to 50 pesos. So, 1, 2, 3. Tingnan natin. Ayan, may mali pala ako, no? So, ulitin natin. So, we would like to check and see the number of cells with less than or equal. So, maglagay tayo dito ng open and close double quotation. Tapos, less than or equal to 50. Ganyan po siya. Tapos, make sure na i-end nyo. Lagyan nyo ng closing parenthesis. So, bilangin natin. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, we have 5, yan, na merong less than or 50. Less than or equal to 50. So, kapag binawasan ko to or dinagdagan ko, yan, magiging 4 na lang. Diba? So, yun yung count if. Again, ulitin natin. Gamitin nyo si word na count if. Tapos dito, open and close parenthesis. Sa loob nito is yung range na titignan nyo. Tapos, comma. Then, open and closing double quotation marks. Tapos yung criterion niya. In this case, ang criterion ko is less than or equal to 50. There you go. That alone is what we call count if naman. Okay. So, any questions so far? Okay. So, pwede pa tayong mag-continue, no? We can also use what we call the today and now. Meron din tayong today. Yan, yung current date natin. Meron din tayo now, current time. Yung date natin dito, pwede mo siyang i-format into another date. Ayan. Or into another formatting. Ayan. Custom date. Pwede mo i-customize yung mga ano natin dito. Alright. So, next, another function that we have here is what we call the formatting function. We have what we call the trimming. Ang trim kasi, it removes the space characters. So, for example, meron ako ditong Jezreel Ian Manuel, or dito na lang tayo. Gawa tayo ng panibagong sheet. Somewhere dito. Hello, my name is Jezreel Ian Manuel. Yan. Using trim, pag gagamitin natin ng trim yan, it will simply remove the space characters. So, yan. Hindi lang siya masyadong nagamit, no? Pero, pwede natin siyang i-trim later on. Actually, ulitin natin to. Kaya, hindi yan gumana kasi hindi siya totally yung space dito. Yung ito, yung mga spaces dyan. So, it will simply convert that. Yan. So, yung spaces dito, matatanggal yan. Hindi yung space dito. Mamaya yon, yung ibang formula yon. Gamitin natin, halimbawa si trim, equals trim, yan, equals trim, tapos open and closing, tapos meron ka ditong string, tapos nandyan yung mga ano mo. Yan. So, kung napansin mo, yung spaces na wala. Okay. So, meron din tayong len naman. Halimbawa, meron akong word dito, Jezreel Ian Manuel. By using what we call the len, it will simply count the number of strings dito. Ayan. So, it has 18, including spaces. We also have what we call concatenate. Ang concatenate naman, ito, it will simply take the values from 2 or more cells and combine them into one cell. So, for example, hello, my name is Jezreel Ian Manuel. So, by simply using concatenate, concatenate, yan, appends string. Yan, you are simply combining them. So, hello, my name. Pero you notice that the way on how you concatenate them doesn't include any spaces at all. So, pwede mo siyang, instead na ganyan, is by adding spaces in between. So, hello, ganyan. Tapos, gaganyan mo siya. Or, oops. Maglalagay ka lang dito ng space and so on. Diba? So, madali lang siyang gawin eh. Concatenate naman. Next, we have one of the most important function in Microsoft Excel is if statements. So for those students under or taking up computer programming subject, this will be very easy for everybody. But then when we say if statements, you are checking a particular condition. Yan, and it return a value depending on logical expression. Say for example, magbigay tayo dito ng example ng grades. You have 75, 74, 95, 93, 92, 70, 60. Tapos dito yung remarks for example, diba? By simply using if statement, yan, we can just simply put here for as long as the grade is greater than or equal to 75, the remark should be passed. Otherwise, the remark should be false. Now, by doing that, we can click on or do or add an if statement. Tapos sa loob nito, we have the logical test. Ano yung logical test natin dito? For as long as this value is greater than or equal to 75, comma, ano yung magiging value mo if true? So, the value is passed. Otherwise, the value is failed. Diba? So, ganun lang siya. Ayan o. 75, 74, failed, and so on. Diba? So, you can also perform different stuff. Halimbawa, gusto mo dito na kapag saktong 75 or, yan, kapag saktong 75, maglalagay na passed. Pero if hindi saktong 75, titignan mo ulit kung yung grade is, for example, equals to 80. If the grade is equal to 80, maglalagay ka ulit ng panibagong remarks. That alone is what we called nested if statements. So instead of adding a remark directly to the false statement here, yan, you can just simply put another if statement. Yan. Tapos, maglalagay ka dito if K38 or the cell is now equal to 80 or equal to 80, for example, ayan, what will happen? Maglalagay ka ngayon dito ng value na, for example, good. Yung word lang na good. Otherwise, anong ilalagay mo? This time, maglalagay ka ngayon ng failed. Oops. Ayan. Pero make sure na kung ilan yung parenthesis na open, ganun din yung closing parenthesis. Ayan o. So, this is pass. Pero pag pinalitan ko yan, ginawa kong 80, magiging good dapat yan dito. Pero ito yung, nagkaiba yan dito eh. Nagkamali tayo dito. So, dito tayo. For as long as the grade is equal, yan, greater than or equal to 75, yan, magiging pass siya. Pero, if hindi siya greater than or equal, ibig sabihin tawag dito, mali yung condition natin dito. So, subukan natin less than. If it is less than or equal to 75, yan, it is pass. Pero since kinukuha natin si 80 dito, ibig sabihin, if nag-false tong statement na to, since 80 yan, if 80 is less than, okay, so pupunta ngayon yun dito. Yun. Diba? So, ibig sabihin, you can actually nest multiple if statement inside the if statement itself. So, napakadami po yan. Napakagandang practice yan. Microsoft Excel and Google Sheet is actually a good platform for us to practice our programming skills at the same time. Napakagaling. Napaka-easing gawin eh. Pero kailangan mo lang isipin kung ano yung nga ba yung mga magiging formula and functions na gagamitin mo. Okay. So, let's move on. What else? We also have some logical operation. Yan. Pag logical operation naman, yung tinatawag natin na and, or, yung mga ganyan. So, if you have a background of computer programming, mas madali sa'yo ang logical operation. Now, when we say logical operation, we have here what we called and, tapos we have here what we called or. Kapag ka or, kasi ibig sabihin, two different conditions, for as long as one of them is true, it will result into true. Kapag and operation naman, for as long as the condition or both conditions are true, it should return true. Okay, ano ibig sabihin yan? Bigay tayo dito ng example na maganda. Ayan. Say for example, gusto nating maglagay ng range na for as long as the grade is from 60 to 75 or 74 rather. Ayan. So kapag ka naglagay ako dito ng grade na 60 to 74, maglalagay dito na remark is failed. We can do that by simply adding an if statement and an end statement in between. So, if statement, kasi dalawang condition na yan di ba? Dalawang condition na nilalagay natin. So, if this one, tandaan nyo if this one is greater than or equal to 60, and at the same time, dalawa. So, maglalagay tayo dito ng end na keyword. Pag ganyan yan. Then, ito ilalagay natin yan dito. Ayan. Diba? For as long as this cell here is greater than or equal to 60, and at the same time, this cell is less than or equal to 74, what will happen? What is the condition or the output na ilalagay natin? Fail. Ngayon dalawa po ang condition na tine-check ni end statements and both of them should be true at the same time. Ayun. Naging false siya, ibig sabihin mali yung condition natin dito kasi wala pa tayong nilalagay na value. Ayun. Diba? So, nung naglagay ako ng 60, failed. Naglagay ako ng 74, failed. Pag naglagay ako ng 75, false ang maglalagay. It's because, syempre, wala pa kasing pangalawang condition. Ayan. Diba? So, kapag ka 60 ulit, kasi for as long as the value here is greater than or equal to 60. Dalawa. Take note, dalawang condition ang tinignan mo. Nakuha ba natin yon? So, try mo siyang gamitin kapag ka mga ganyan. Mga, alam mo yun? Mga range in particular. So, 60, 74, failed, pass, and so on. What else? Kapag ka-or naman, for example, kapag ka-or, halimbawa, ang nilagay ko ditong value for as long as nilagay kong value dito is 75 or 90, magpapakita dito is passed. Yan. Pag 75 or 90, magpapakita is passed. Diba? So, pwede natin gawin yan by using or statement. If this cell is equal to 75 or pag may or na yan, ibig sabihin, use the or keyword on top of that. Yan. Dito, comma, this one, tapos 90. Lagay tayo dito, comma ulit. Lagay tayo ulit dito ng past. Otherwise, failed ang lalagay natin. Diba? So, kapag ka 90, pass pa rin yan. Pero pag hindi 75 or 90, yan, diba? Eksaktong condition lang ang nagpapakita. Ganun po siya. So, that's and or statement na meron tayo. Any questions so far? Alright, next is what we call the VLOOKUP. Pag sinabi nating VLOOKUP, tingnan natin ang VLOOKUP na function, yan, it will simply look up a specific cell based on a specific criterion at the same time. So it's simply, it is actually being used as one of the most popular functions in Microsoft Excel and at the same time Google Sheets, because the VLOOKUP function works like this one. So for example, meron tayo ditong mga ID number. Yan. Meron tayong ID number, meron din tayo ditong first name, Meron din tayong last name. We also have the salary. So for example, ang ID number natin dito is very random. Lagay lang natin. Yan, 53, 56, 17, 78. Isin natin to ha. This is an example of a VLOOKUP. So for example, we have Emily Smith with a salary. Ang salary, syempre, magiging $sign yan. So, yan. So, halimbawa lang. I'm putting here random values. Yan. So, Emily Smith, Uzumaki, Naruto, Uchiha, Sasuke. Yan. Tapos, Maring Kitagawa. VLOOKUP na tayo ha. Richard Gomez, Ricardo Dalisay, and Bongbong Marcos, Bongbong Robredo. Yan. So, for example, gusto mong tignan, for example, pag nag-type ako dito ng ID, it will simply print out the salary. Ayan. Now, using what we call the VLOOKUP, that is now actually possible. Gets pa natin? Okay. Now, gamit tayo dito ng VLOOKUP. In the VLOOKUP, you have to consider the following arguments inside the VLOOKUP. Number one is, of course, kung ano yung number na tinype mo dito or cell. For example, ito, G2. Kung ano yung itatype ko dito, it will now simply look up the following. So that is from here up to dito. Yun yung range niya. So kung ano man yung itatype ko dito sa salary, i-check niya ngayon dito kung sakto yung number. Okay? Kung sakto yung number dito. Now, the next parameter here is number 4. Ang number 4 naman ngayon, or the third argument, it will simply tell the VLOOKUP function to return the value in the same row from the fourth column of this table. Fourth column of this table. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, ibig sabihin, whatever value na sakton si G2. Halimbawa, si G2, nag-type tayo dito ng 14. Ang titignan niya ngayon na cell is from here up to here. Kung alin dyan yung may saktong 14, yan, it will now simply return a value from the fourth table, which is the salary. So, tignan natin. May kulang pa tayo dito, which is the false. The false now, itong false dito, this particular argument will simply tell the VLOOKUP function to return an exact match. If the VLOOKUP function, yan, cannot contain the value 33 in the first column, it will return an error. So, tignan natin yan. So, for now, error yan. Pero kapag ka nag-type tayo kasi dito ng something, like a number, for example. Yan. So, pwede yan. I-copy ko nga muna ito. Yan. So, nimbawa ito, gawin kong 53. Ayun. Diba? Nung 53 ang pinakita ko dito, nagpakita si 456. So, kung 78 halimbawa, ito ang magpapakita. Diba? So, you can actually use this, or you can actually use this particular formula kung gusto mo mag-check ng specific na value sa isang table. So, kung gusto nating palabasin si pangalan naman or si first name and last name, pwede naman natin siyang i-concatenate at the same time, diba? Pero, in this case, hindi na eh. Ano nang natin to kung yung second table ang lalabas natin, ayun. Diba? Kung yung third table ang lalabas natin, ayun yung lalabas. Diba? So, wala kang magiging problema dyan. So, ayusin na ngayon natin to. Lagay natin to dito. Oops. Yung formula dyan. Then, this should be the ID na itatype natin. And this should be the cell. In this case, the cell is oops. Anong cell ito? G2. And G2. So, itong G2, if for example, 72, ayun, kay Smith lalabas. Diba? So, that alone is an example of a VLOOKUP na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, pwede rin natin siyang magamit kapag ka mga approximate naman na mga match yung pinakamalapit, approximate. See, for example, here, we have the following. We have score, tapos for example, grade. Kapag ka mga approximate kasi, 0, 60, 70, 80, 90, then you have here a grade of F, D, C, B, A. Tapos gusto mo nga yung i-type dito yung score, tapos yung grade. For example, kapag ka nag-type ako dito ng 85, lalabas dapat dito is yung pinakamalapit sa 85, which is B. Diba? So that is possible by using VLOOKUP. So you have VLOOKUP, you have open and close parentheses. You will check this condition from the following cell range. And ano ilalabas niya dito sa second column. Tapos true. Ayun. Diba? So kapag ka-type ko dito 55, F ang lalabas kasi mas malapit siya dito sa 0. Approximate yan kumbaga. Kapag ka 90 naman, yun, A ang lumabas. Pero kapag ka 93, A pa rin ang lumabas. Pero tignan natin kapag ka 83, B ang lumabas. Pagka 85, or kapag ka 75, C ang lumabas. Diba? So, that's actually the purpose or the concept of what we called VLOOKUP in Google Sheet and Microsoft Excel at the same time. So, do you have any questions so far? Marami pa akong papakitang mga sample natin dito. Okay, so I think wala na tayong question. Balik ko tong PowerPoint presentation natin. I mean, the module presentation natin. Because there are still some missing in order for us to answer this one. Now, for your performance check, it's very important for you to follow the steps, the different steps on how to do this. Okay? So, meron tayong two different parts dito. Number one is more on formatting. You have to understand, you have to do this in a proper way. Okay? And the second part is more on calculation, which is actually the challenging part. This time, meron kang gagamitin ng mga absolute reference, meron kang gagamitin ng mga function like average, functions like the if statements, and condition, and so on. Especially on this part. Now, hindi ko pa kasi totally na ituturo sa inyo yung tinatawag natin na data validation. Diba? Kasi I have mentioned here that you have to put what we call data validation technique. Ang data validation technique is actually a way for us to validate if a specific data that you have entered is a legitimate value or not. So for example, ang score natin dito is maximum of 10. Ibig sabihin, kapag ka naglalagay ako ng score dito na maximum of 10, hanggang 10 lang ang pwede kong ilagay. Hindi pwedeng less than 10. I mean, hindi pwedeng 0. I mean, hindi pwedeng negative. Hindi rin pwedeng more than 10. Okay? Ayan o. If the user entered a score less than or equal to the total score, it should validate that one. So, student 1, student 1, student 2, student 3, and so on. Ayan, so student 10. I-validate natin. So, click natin tong cell range na to. Then we can just simply go here sa my part ng data. Tapos, click on data validation. Now, the cell range here, maglalagay ka ngayon dito ng condition or criteria. For as long as the number, take note, for as long as the number is greater than this one, okay, greater than 10 in particular, lalagay tayo dito, yan, greater than 10, you will be rejecting the input, tapos maglalagay ka dito ng warning, yan, or you will just simply reject the input. Tingnan natin, if the number you have entered here is greater than 10, yan, it will reject the input. So pag 5, nagkaroon ng problema. So, the data you entered in cell 37 violates the data validation rules on that set. So, sabihin mali yung pagkakaset natin. So, ulitin natin. Data validation. Now, if the number is, for as long as the number is less than, yan. For as long as the number is less than 10, i-remove muna natin yung validation para ma-sure. And if the number is less than or equal to 10, yan, yun yung i-validate niya. Tingnan natin, kapag 5, okay lang. Pag 2, 1, di ba? Ayan. Pero, tingnan natin kapag ka nag-more than. Ayan. So, kapag ka nag-more than, halimbawa naglagay ka ng 11, of course, automatic, magkakaroon ng error. So, pwede natin siyang lagyan pa ng iba pang validation. For example, meron ka ditong halimbawa lang, wrong input. Ayan. So, meron dapat papakita. Ayun, wrong input. Diba? So, that alone is what we call the data validation. So, for every score na ilalagay nyo dito, dapat, yun lang yung number. Ayan. So, number less than or equal to the number of 20. Reject the input. So, ibig sabihin, pag nagkaya akong 21, bawal. Nagkaya akong 0, pwede. Negative 5, technically bawal yan. So, that's another validation. Diba? Ayan. So, understood? So, yun yung tinatawag natin na data validation technique. What else? Conditional formatting. Okay. For the conditional formatting, nakalagay dito kasi, anyone who got 74 and below will highlight the cell into a red color. 75 and above will highlight the green. It's actually very easy to do. So, pwede natin siyang gawin dito. Halimbawa, 74, 75, 66. Yan. By simply adding what we call the conditional formatting, pwede kang i-right-click mo lang yan. Or para mas madali, dito na lang sa may data. Wait lang, hanapin ko lang. Yan, data validation. Dito, sa format, tapos conditional formatting. Now, for as long as, yan, maglalagay ka ngayon ng rule, for as long as this one is actually greater than or equal to 75, you will now be formatting the style. So, magiging green yan, and so on. So, pwede ka rin maglagay ng panibagong rule na for as long as the value is less than or equal to, for example, or less than 75, for example, pwede ka ngayon maglagay ng red. Ayun. So, you have two different values, di ba? If the value is greater than or equal to 75, it should be green. If the value is less than 75, it should be red. And so, kapag ka ako dito, papalit ako dito ng value, working na siya. Diba? So, that alone is what we call conditional formatting. And for the remarks, you have to make sure to use end statements, conditional statements. Meron naman tayo dito example. So, it's important for you to at least do that. Now, take note. Punta tayo dito sa may way of submission ng ating activities. So, in order for us to submit this assignment or this activity, I want everyone to, finalize their groupings because you will be submitting this in the following ways. Sasabit nyo sa akin yung link. Okay. So, number 1, the website URL. Saan po makukuha yun? Dito sa share. Tapos, make sure to change to anyone with the link. To anyone with the link. Hindi po restricted yan. Copy this link. Okay. Kung hindi naman kayo sa Google Sheet nag-work, you can click on file. Tapos, download nyo lang to. Download this one as XL. SX. Ayan. XLSX. XLSX. Ayan. Para mas madali pong mag-submit. Okay? So, do you have any questions so far? None? Okay, so if you have some questions in the future regarding this activity, just make sure to ask me na lang ha. PM nyo lang ako. Okay, so goodbye everyone.